It is of my great pleasure to do the requisition process on e-procurement software system of the Museum Victoria as a project management proposal here. And my name is Chen. I will be the main speaker today. Before we go into the project management proposal part, I would like to briefly introduce a little bit about Museum Victoria. Museum Victoria is the largest public museum organizations in Australia. It has annually 2.1 million visitors with 17 million individual items. This numbers is a clear clue to give us an information that within these organizations, it has a lot of inside suppliers buying, selling, a lot of procurement or invoice like transformation part. And about this part, currently the Museum Victoria is using a manual paper-based requisition system for those massive procurement process. Yet it faces a lot of issues. For instance, such as inefficient tracking, process leaking, time delaying, lots of paperwork. So this project aims to solve this solve these issues by proposing an online procurement software system. And the requisition process is part of the, or we could say one of the chef functionality of that. It is integrated in the software system. And by doing so, there are lots of benefits by doing it, such as centralized tracking, report on commitment, audit trailing, standardized approved processing, and the formal workflow verification. Why this project business case? There are three types of answer to explain this. The first one is strategy. This project aligns with the digital transformation strategy of the company. And the next one is benefits. There are three types of benefits that explain why this project business case. The first one is time efficiency. In general, by doing so, we could speed up the requisition processing, reduce requisitions error and rework, or reduce the risk of improperly approval. And also it brings a lot of monetary profits, such as reduce the license overhead, or very apparently, it drastically reduced the paperwork associated costs. And standardized here, I think it has the two different meanings here. The one is provide a unified requisition experience. It is more easy for the whole company to manage the process, to save both the time and profits of the process. And on the same time, it would provide some personalized requisition process based on the unified one. So the standardized has the two kinds of meaning. And also it saves a lot of cost, like it saves some digital or storage cost of here. And below these slides, I list several reasons, like several risks if we do this project. Apparently, there are some risks, such as it could arise the data security risks, but we are facing a lot more risks if we don't do this, such as we would face high risk and high frequency of requisitions error or improper approval requisitions request. To further illustrate this project business case a little bit, I would like to detailize a little bit about the benefits and the costs here. So apparently, the time efficiency and expenses saving could be much more benefit if we contract it with the cost. And in the next part, I would like to introduce the project deliverables of this project. In general, there are two types of project deliverables, which is paperwork and product. The paperwork includes the project development plan, project management plan, and the progress report and the final report. So in the first part, it's more like project management related deliverables. The next type of is the project deliverables. It's in general, it's an integrated online recognition system software, which embedded in e-procurement software. More specifically, the project deliverables include the source code, the documents, and a complete functionality of the regression process, and some acceptance tests. And in the following slides, I will detailize some project deliverables here. The first one is the project development plan. It includes the project vision, project charter, and the design documents. The project visions include work breakdown structure, Gantt chart, and project development sprint. The project charter would include project description, and such as the scope statement, proposal requirements, objectives, milestones, stakeholders, identifications, and budget and risk constraints. Also, in the design documents, it will include the design protocols, design document, user interface design management plan, and design update plan. The next type of the project management related deliverables is project management plan, including the update plan, team contrast, project cost management, and the project change management. The last one is the progress report and the final report, which is detailized as at product-related deliverables. So another part is beside the paperwork, we share that another part of the deliverables is the project-related deliverables. It includes source code. The source code is composed of two parts. One is the execute code. The execute code will have legible and precise comments and an easy read structure. And the test codes would be an example of the completed templates, but it's just a test sample. The documents in the project, in the product deliverables include executable code, the functionality such as electronic requisition form, which contains complete fields such as selected date, suppliers, list code, item description, quantity, and etc. This part will be give you much more information in the later part. And also the functionality includes the GST and test calculation, the currency transformation, meaning that any foreign currency would be finally transferred into Australian dollars. And also the ability to save, cancel, check, confirm, and attach extra information during the whole process of the requisition system. And the last product deliverables is the acceptance tests. Stakeholders and the requirements. In this part, I would firstly identify the methodology I'm using here is to firstly identify the stakeholders and then identify their stakeholders' needs and requirements one each by each. And at last is collect and form related solutions on them. So the first step is to identify the stakeholders. I identify 7 groups of stakeholders. But by doing so, I firstly identify the different life cycle of this project stage. And I put those groups of people, put those groups of identified stakeholders into this 5 life cycle stage. In here, you can see that in the conceptual preparation cycle, there are examples of related stakeholders such as acquirers, suppliers, certification authorities. In this part, it's more like authorizations and paperwork preparation process. And in the development part, more like developers and administrators engaged in this process. And in the transfer and product of use, it's more managers would be step in this life cycle stage to do the controlling things. And in the last operation part, there are stakeholders such as employee, unexpected users, for instance, those people who doing the test, those people who do the whole control, do the whole administration stuff, and also appliers and auditors and etc. Because this requisition system, after finish it, it will connect it to lots of other parts of the project, of the whole e-procurement project, such as the ordering processing, the financial processing. This will be introduced in the later part. So after I identify 7 stakeholders, I detailized into each ones and to find their needs and requirements based on different groups of stakeholders. As the customers, here customer is the employee within the Museum Victoria. For their needs, I think the chef of their needs is to have an easier online requisition process. The functionality includes saving, tracking, canceling. The next group of the stakeholders is the developers. The first type of developers is data engineer. They have to define the data security level and account authorization level. The data security level means a requisition form has lots of information such as date, GST, personal information. Different data should be identified with different security level. And if people want to apply the accessibility of the different data, they may have the relative access account authorization level to access relatively data security. And the next part is the assign accounts with different accessibility. That's what I'm saying. The next part is the authorization process should be compatible to the specific operating system. And also it should be the MSSQL 2008 to 2012 database server should support distributed database because this company has 2 data center databases with distributed and batch stream technology. We have to make sure that the data engineer is very familiar with the disaster recovery and those kind of security stuff. The next type of the developer is the software developer. The software developers have some needs and requirements, such as the requisition development environment should support a specific operating system, and they have to get those data from the MSQL database with accessible port. And also, after the requisition process, those data sets and the processing information should be transferred to the GP finance system and CRM system with possible and workable access port. And also as a development of the software developer, as they are receiving the data from the database and they are transfer those data to the next level or next stage of the project, they have to make sure that each transformation, or at the beginning or at the tail, it should has the data security for encryption and decryption. Last but not least, the software developers should also support the IS web server, where the software is running on the company-based safe web. And the last type of developers is the interface or the user interface developer, designer. they need like a requisition interface, a complete and technically very satisfying requisition form with sufficient information fields in the form. And also they may need to design more interface in the confirmation page, in the cancel page, or in the status checking interface page. The third kind of group is suppliers. The suppliers stakeholders has the needs such as provide sufficient real-time information to supply chain and set up a Microsoft Dynamics grid plan and transfer to the system. So basically, they are like providing ample information in the system and has like a regularly on-time updating form. The fourth part, the fourth stakeholders I identified here is the financial office. They has the requirement, they have requirements to prompt users to check that there's available budget in Magic Queue and also approve and monitor the supplier status responsible for conversion of the requisitions into a purchase order. The fifth stakeholders I identify here is the approver. So once someone who apply, so once some appliers finish all the requisition processing, after they click the confirmation part, the approver is able to connect to exchange the message system, and the requisitions approved process would be sent to them, to the approvers, to check whether to accept or deny those processes. The next part is to introduce this group of this project. So this slide shows the whole picture of the big E procurement system, software system. In the bottom layer, it is generally a general processing of the e-procurement processing. So for instance, the suppliers would have to register their information using the desired system. And next, the employee of the Museum Victoria would conduct the requisitions processing by typing in the ledger code of the supplier information and select the different different product or goods they wanted to do this transformation. And the next part is so after they finish those requisition part, the processing would be generalized and would be sent to the approver. Once the approver is approved, the next step is going to the budget part. The budget part would check whether they have like a sufficient financial support or would have sufficient budget in the system. If the budget check is approval is good, this process would next go to the purchase part. The purchase part is like to make this deal happen, right? And after the purchase, there are final steps such as getting the receipt or invoice from those kind of things. So this bottom layers is a general introduction of the total projects group. But since we are focusing on the requisition process, I will detailize the requisition process, the project scope of the requisition process. The requisition process contains several parts here. The first one is to the users, whether the users, meaning whether the suppliers have sufficient information to be registered into the system, or the employee have its right authorities to log into the system and to do the requisition process. So if the user access is accepted, we go to the requisitions process. The first one is to fill in the form. There are several parts of the filling the form. The first one is to fill in the basic information. The next one is to do the multi-item checking. So for instance, so one employee, they could like require multiple product from multiple suppliers. So each line they are choosing, the system has to automatically check the general ledger code. And some specific ledger code may have specific policies on them. And after doing that, is they have to standardize the currency to transferring all the different foreign exchange into the Australian dollars. And after they get a final number, they have to add it with automatically add it with the GST. And this system should allow the user to attach some extra information, like for further explanation why this purchasing, this procurement process is necessary, or how would it affect the companies with more details. As during the whole filling the form processing, the user could also save the form at any time, or just cancel at any time. But once they complete and submit this online form, they will create a process number to this requisition process, and those information, those signal would goes to the would inform the approver, and the approver would decide whether this process should be added with more information, or it's approved or denied choice. And also this whole processing has lots of impact by this 5 parts, which I identify here. This is the second stage of the project scope. The supplier information would be firstly stored in the microdynamics grid planes. And when people are checking general ledger here, actually they are getting those data from the data storage. And those data storage is data is actually from the supplier information. And also the inform approver processing, the data is being delivered by the email and message system using the MX exchange within the Museum Victoria. And at any time, if the company, they wanted to have some clue about how those data going, those like data analysis part, they should use the magic queue to extract those data from the data storage. And also, after all this part, because after the approval part, it goes to the financial part, such as you have to do the budget checking or purchasing process. Those process is related to the finance part. And this is the Gantt chart of the total project. It would start from the September and ended at like next year, the January of the next year. So it's approximate like 3 to 4 month duration. And the Gantt chart is divided into 7 parts. The first part is initiation. The initiation including the group forming, the first identification, project proposal and approval. And the second part is the conception. The conception part is more likely requirements collection or finalization, such as functionality requirements identification, technology requirements identification, hardware, software, performance, quantity, human resource requirements identification. And also it will specify some project success criteria and create a group statement. These first two stage would be count around like 20 days to do this. The next part is the third and the fourth phase of the Gantt chart is the planning and execution part. In the planning part, there are device project management plan, such as make group management plan, make projects group plan, cost and risk, stakeholder, quality, and even change management plan. The next is the device project execution plan, including the technical approach, potential step back, and the implementation plan and the procurement plan. The main part is the execution part. As you can see here, it is it includes like conduct procurement, design application, develop application, and the testing application. The main execution part would be last around like 1 or 2 months. The last part is after the implementation, there are monitoring and controlling. And also finally, if it goes well, these requisition processing would be launched with the whole e-procurement system. And finally, the project will be closed. And I would like to share some information about the justification and explanation for this plan. The first one is the work breakdown structure. I identify 7 level 1 work breakdown structure here, which is initiation, conception, planning, execution, monitoring, controlling, launch, and close. The initiation part, as I introduced in the last slide, there are like develop project charter, kickoff meeting, project proposal. Conception part is prolong of the initiation part, such as create a scope statement, define requirements, and do the project proposal part. After the conception part comes to the planning execution. The planning is like making cost, risk, stakeholder, change management plan. Execution would engage lots of designer, software developer, data engineering to do the execution part. And the whole process is included in the monitoring and controlling part. And the final step is the launching and closing. The network diagram shows here, but it is not very huge diagram. I drew this in one software system, but as I cut the screen, it's just like this. But in general, as I mentioned here, the main part of this is to develop design application and develop application execution part. This would be the most dependent and the time spending process of this whole project. The RCI matrix is I identified several roles of this RCI matrix, such as project manager, interface designer, data engineer, data analysis, and financial officer. Here, the financial officer could be also the financial approver or the whole process approver. So the financial officer and project management has the most authorizations on the project conceptual design, the most decisions about the project's group, deliverables, the project proposal part, and also they are in charge of how to connect with those suppliers to let them to get those informations from them. And other people such as designer, engineer, and analyst, they are part of the implementation project here with specific product deliverables here. The cost estimation is composed of 6 parts. The main cost is the software and the human resource part. Since the Museum Victoria has its own PC laptop with the many Apple and Windows-based PC, they would save lots of money on here. But here I still count some like maintenance fee as a hardware cost here. And also the data service, including the data storage processing and the input and output transformation data costing. And it is like 1 TB per hour per AUD, and it will be prolonged like 2 years, and the subtotal is like here. So the total cost is around 46,000 for this part. The risk register here would be some, I identified the 6th part of the risk registration here, including the finance, technology, schedule, cost, performance, and project management part here. The finance part is a lack of cash flow and also a low ROI in initial period. The technology part is our service crashed by accident, basically meaning even we have to data center with distributed database, we cannot guarantee that if there is a sudden threshold of data access, for instance, if during the Christmas or Black Friday, a lot of people accessing to the website and they're accessing the data, they're trying to connect or buy lots of product from suppliers. It may cause the system to crash. So this could be a project risk of the test. And also the schedule may have problem with insufficient project flow, such as free flow and test flow. In our project, we might have insufficient free flow that the time can be late in finishing without impacting the start of the flowing activities. And also we may face the performance risks such as requirement shortfall, which means our project do not meet the requirements of our stakeholders, or our product and service do not achieve requirement value. Also, the last requirement, the last risk is the project management risk. We might lack of experience in some parts, kind of things. But after finishing this, I hope you could choose our group to do this project, because we are very clear what's the benefit. We're good at digitalize, numberize the benefits of our product. We are very clear. You could save a lot of money, and not both the monetary saving and time efficiency against the cost. Also, we have lots of like project management strategy, especially we have experience the IT project management strategy with change management, because as you know, nowadays with a lot of big data and AI with the machine learning, those kind of things, the change management is becoming like more and more important to us. So yeah, that's it.